All right, everyone. I am Marwan Cameron, and this is another episode of The Conduit. We are going to jump right on in. We've got a great show for you today. As you can see, I don't often have people in the studio with me, but today I have Pastor Ellington. Pastor, how you doing today?
I'm Pops. I'm 100. Thanks
Oh,
for having me, brother.
all right. And of course, we have Sister Kuye Vargas with us. How are you doing today?
Oh, I'm doing fine. Hello, family. How's everybody doing?
Blessed and highly favored for sure. But in the spirit of truth and reconciliation, today we are going to talk about Bishop Desmond Tutu. Yep. Good afternoon to you, Rob. You know, are we coming through nice and clear for you? Sound good? Look good? So we're going to be talking about Bishop Desmond Tutu in the Spirit of Truth and Reconciliation Commission initiative through Kitsap ERACE. And Okuye, what was the other one that is part of this initiative? We don't want to leave anyone out here.
Yes, this is part of our Living Arts Cultural Heritage. We are commemorating just the life and legacy and life changing. We're talking about life changing legacies that we need to do some corrective history with as well. And so this is two, and which is the time that we really want to use this as a time that we will launch the initiative for 2022 with truth and reconciliation, peacemaking, and we just want to be talking truth together. We want to begin to move things to a place of healing and reconciliation, and we're going to stay in the vein of healing and reconciliation for the entire year. And what does that look like for all of us, not just for the African American community and not just for the European community, not just for our Native communities, but how do we bring all of our communities to a place of healing and reconciliation and truth telling and being able to talk about these things in a way with compassion, be able to talk about it with sharing our hearts and with compassion. So this is the work that we're launching with Kitsap ERACE Coalition, our Breaking Bread team, which is our faith team, our faith-based leaders leading this work with peace, truth, and reconciliation, which we know that we've been called to be peacemakers. We've been called to be to walk in the ministry of truth and reconciliation. And so we would like to begin to cultivate this work. And what does this work really look like for us here in Kitsap County? Especially when it comes down to racial, dealing with the racial history, not just here, but racial injustice, because we wanted to address that and kick it off for Black History Month and have this conversation that we're having here at the Conduit in our communities and for Black Lives 365 for the entire year. What does that really, really look like for us? So we're setting the tone for it here.
All right. I like that. Right before we went live, I had to cut you both of your conversations short because we were going live. But the three of us have had our own individual conversations about the fact that, Black History Month being in February 1 is the shortest month, and you're coming right after the new year. And so you're trying to recover from the holidays and then a new fiscal year starting and everything else, the kids going back to school, and you're trying to ramp up and then, be observant and do this work. And then it's just like a flash in the pan. Here it is, and then it's gone. And then it shouldn't just be February. Pastor Ellington, would you speak on your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I wholeheartedly are in agreement with that. I think it's a bit of an injustice that my mic's kind of cutting me off. That's fine. I could do this. It's a bit of an injustice for us to you know, one be relegated to the shortest month of the year. Um, there's so much to go over as far as our history. We are that essential thread woven throughout the history of America. If you pull out that thread, all of America untangles, and so it does. Yeah, it's yeah. I know it's in and out.
No, no, you're fine. I was just telling you to fix your headset there.
Oh
Sorry.
no, I like to leave one
Oh,
ear clear
gotcha.
so I can hear. But anyway, it does not just our community, but all of America injustice to just kind of like you said, be that flash in the pan, and then when it is the curriculum is very dated. I'll put it that way. A lot of uh, information is not uh, being shared that would be pride, to ourselves. So I'll just kind of end it there for right now.
Absolutely. Okuye, back to you. Uh,
Yes.
this is you've been doing this work for so long, and you have been um, a leader in this community, a trailblazer, if you will. And I know we're honoring Desmond Tutu here. So, can you speak on his legacy? Why is he so important to recognize,
Yes.
and for all of us to know, but
Yes.
even our children?
I think that when we talk about the life and legacy of Bishop Desmond Tutu, he always moved in a way of peacemaking, because he believed that the road to health and healing was through making peace, being able to bring our communities to a place where we're not in conflict, we're not at odds, and we are working towards what we called, transformative, life changing work. And we're talking about transformational work. And he knew that he had to lay the foundation for all of, not just for our nation, but for the globe, for humanity. He really was talking about how human beings have to respect themselves and respect others, how to cultivate compassion, and what does love and compassion really look like? How do we do it on the top of all of this, the violence, and on top of all of the conflict, and on top of all of the discord? And he knew that that was going to be his life work.
Um, Pastor Ellington, from what you know of Desmond Tutu's life, what is something that we should be taking away from his legacy?
Um, don't miss. I hope I'm not misquoting Des Tutu here, uh, but correct me if I'm wrong. I do believe he had. I hear Sister Kuye constantly mention the truth and reconciliation, and I think she's referring to what many of us, in the lamest terms, may know about the movie Hotel Rwanda. The Hutsis and the Tutus, and that genocide. Am I correct, Sister?
One of the things I would say, that was a part of the work, but
Yeah.
Bishop Desmond Tutu worked from the spiritual realm,
Yeah.
and the truth. Truth comes from a spiritual place. Reconciliation, compassion, love, kindness, all of forgiveness. All of these foundational. He's working from the foundational principles of spiritual health and well-being. And that cuts across all religions, all humanity. He's talking about how we ought to treat one another as human beings, and what that really looks like for all of us moving forward, on top of all of these other injustices, on top of all of these atrocities, on top of all of the, one of the things that he always would refer to was, how do you begin to heal back? What do you mean by heal back? Our young people had the awesome opportunity to be in a conference back in 2008 with Bishop Desmond Tutu. 3 days for him with our young people doing peace and reconciliation and compassion and forgiveness. And it was life changing and transformational, for not just for myself, but for those young people to be able to understand their own resilience when they've been done harm to. How do they come to a place where spiritually on the inside they can heal from those things? It was very powerful. And so we were able to go to the National Youth Leadership uh, down in Minnesota, where we've worked with the Nobel Prize winners and all of those for the last 20 years, and those leaders, those global leaders from around the world, to be able to do some of this heart work. And I say not hard work, but heart work, because he's dealing with the hearts and the minds and the soul and the spirit and the whole person, the whole human being, to be able to move into those places where they might be challenged because of oppression, because of the injustices, because of the trauma and atrocities that have been inflicted upon the soul and inflicted upon the human being themselves. And that was some deep work. And so we want, we lost him in 2021, and it seemed as if, during the COVID, that everyone just went on. you know they said, oh, Bishop Desmond Tutu died. I didn't hear us doing that outpour for the spiritual health and well-being and the legacy to continue to do this deep work. And what does it look like for us moving forward? I'm not sure. And so for 2021, with the Living Life Leadership Team and with the Living Arts Cultural Heritage and the Kitsap ERACE Breaking Bread, we want to focus on truth and reconciliation. That's one of the deep heart works that we want to be able to cultivate in our community, for our families and for our county as a whole. And, we looked around, and we saw that a lot of this work there was a big push for this work right before COVID hit. But then right after COVID hit, it just like fell to the wayside. It just fell on deaf ears. And it's needed more now than ever, because of the hardships, because of the different things that have been erupting in our nation with George Floyd and the killings and all of that. That was the time to really move this type of work into what we were doing, because we were trying to deal with undoing some of the atrocities that have been inflicted, and to try to do it without doing it from a spiritual place of health and well-being, um, is really doing all of us harm, more harm than anything else. And so we felt the urgency to be able to say, this is where our focus will be for 2022. And what better initiative can we bring forth than truth and reconciliation, and to honor the life and legacy of Bishop Desmond Tutu, to continue this work.
Amen.
It's interesting, the things that you brought up. And if I can just speak to Christina's quote from Desmond Tutu, if you want peace, you don't talk to your friends, you talk to your enemies.
Yes.
Um, and what's interesting about that is I agree wholeheartedly with what you were saying, right? We had a lot of momentum. We had a lot of advocates come together and do a lot of the hard work, as you said. And, COVID was this perfect storm of people being isolated and wanting to galvanize together around something, and to have a purpose. And now that things are opening back up, people are kind of going back into their separate ways and doing their own separate things, and all the distractions are back again. And it's frustrating to see, right? Uh,
Yes.
there have been momentum losses in different aspects of initiatives that have taken on a lot of steam in regards to my life. Things that had a lot of momentum in 2021, where it's kind of fallen back a little bit. And it is a concern when you speak to, Desmond Tutu passing, and collectively, we're not really um, taking that in for what his life was, what his legacy was, and doing all the work that he did in a continent so far away, and the impacts that it had here in America, and what that is. And I think about, if he had the spirit of many of us today in the modern day, we wouldn't be where we are now, right? He kept his momentum going, and we have to fight with that same zeal and zest as we move forward, and we can't tire. One of my favorite gospel songs is, that they that wait on the Lord shall renew. They shall mount up on wings like an eagle. They shall walk and not faint. Um, and so it's just, you must keep going. You must keep going. And to this quote specifically, we don't talk to our enemies, but we aren't even talking to each other in our
Oh, I want you to expound on that because that's real. Because you're right. Anytime we have conflict, it's just like we become even more enemies, enemy, at one another's throat, and not forgiving and not having compassion and not even dialoguing and creating a whole lot of chaos and confusion. Talk a little bit about that, Marwan.
Well, the thing is this, we all want a boogeyman to point at, and there are a lot of real boogeymen out there. White supremacy and racism and all the things that we can point at. Um, and at some point in time, there has to be an accountability on our side of doing the work. I was saying the other day, we understand what post traumatic slave syndrome is. But if we know that and we understand that, why are we still operating under that same paradigm, right? How do we not move past that when we have knowledge, when we are woke in what holds us back, but we still continue to do the same things? To me, it's even worse to continue to conduct yourself in that way when you have knowledge and understanding of what's happening within you and the other people in the community that you're trying to collaborate with, but then you fall into the same pitfalls, right? So for those that don't know, and they're not woke, then they're ignorant, not ignorant in a bad way, but just of the not knowing, not understanding. And so it is upon us to find a way, those of us that know that we are going to be plagued by these things that are in our DNA, unfortunately, because we're still in the societal structure that must change. We've got to do better. We have to find a way. We're so quick to forgive everyone else and everything else, but we don't forgive each other, and many times we don't forgive ourselves. So I think forgiveness is one, right? Um, and wanting to see each other win. I want to see my brother win. I want to see my sister win, and it doesn't matter if I'm not winning, that's their thing to win on. So allow them to win, right? Your opportunity will come. And if there is space for you to be able to make it so that other people can also benefit from it, then bring them in, and allow them to collaborate. But you also have to allow them. People say a lot of times, black folks aren't a monolith. And that's true. We all think very different ways. You've got Democrats, you've got Republicans, you've got libertarians, you have folks that kind of pick and choose a la carte, like I am. Uh, and in that, you still have to allow people their space to be the leaders in their own life, to be able to charge ahead and do the things that they believe, and then find those ways to create synergies so that you can come together and do more and have some economies of scale in what it is that you're trying to achieve. When the pastor's sitting with me now, and we just spent the last 4 hours on planning just that. How do we continue to go forward together stronger? Now, we don't see eye to eye on every single thing, but we see eye to eye on the most important things. And from that basis, then we can go forward. And through respect and love, then even when we disagree, we understand that there's no malice or anything that's behind it. It's just I don't feel that way. Um, and so, we really have to model it because, again, we can talk about it all day long, but we need to see it, and then we need to reinforce it every day. It is the hard work. The hard work is hard work. It's not easy work.
Yeah, speak to that because I think when we talking about this thing, and I say it a thing because some people just put it in its own little compartment somewhere. When we're talking about truth, and we're talking about reconciliation, and we're talking about how do you bring healing, because that's what we're really talking about. How do we bring healing when there has been damage, hurt, harm, trauma, all of these things? Because we have been in those cycles. And I don't belittle anyone's work. I try never to belittle anyone's work, but I try to bring some knowledge because the word always says, the people perish. People perish because of the lack of knowledge. So, what's lacking here? How do we bring understanding? How do we bring knowledge? How do we bring wisdom? How do we bring revelation, knowledge, and understanding so that people's consciousness and their hearts and their minds are being pricked to what's right? And then I said, what's right? And I said, some people, they struggle with what's right and what's wrong. And then people say, there's not a right or a wrong, but that's not true. That's not true. There are right ways to be able to bring forth a desired outcome. And then there's a wrong way to bring about a wrong desired outcome. So I say, okay, if there's no right and wrong, if you leveling the playing field and you say to me, there's no right and wrong, where do we get in to bring forth reconciliation?
Pastor?
So, I just want to kind of comment on a couple of things you guys said. I know my mic's kind of cutting in
No,
and
no, you're
out.
good.
So
Just stay close to it. You're perfect.
okay. So first, to what Brother Mawan was saying, the post traumatic slave syndrome, PTSD disorder. Um, you know, I agree with you that you know we have gained knowledge, of that. However, I got to push back a little bit on that because, just because I know I have a flat tire doesn't mean that I have the tools to address that flat tire. And that's what we're lacking,
Yes.
are the tools that need to be created. And the ones that have already been created need to be implemented, need to be used. People need to be made aware of them and have access to them in order to bring ourselves out of that sleepy state, that we're still in. Because yeah, I know I have a flat tire. Um, as to, I want to go back a little bit as to what I was saying about the truth and uh, resur-
Reconciliation.
thank you.
Hold one thought before you say that. Don't
Okay,
lose your thought.
no,
This is what squaring the circle is, right? So Kuye contacts me and says, "Hey, I want to come on and do a podcast, Desmond Tutu." Right? We have this discussion, and here I'm saying, "Okay." Kuye says, "Hey, we've got to do better. We've got to, keep that momentum going." I talk about post-traumatic slave syndrome and say, "Hey, folks that know should be doing better." And then Pastor comes in and says, "Well, you know what? I need to push back on that." And that's what it's about, right? It's not a monolith. We all have this thought that needs to bring to bear. And with that, he can say, you know what? Yes, we got the flat tire, but they need the tools, right? That's the squaring of the circle. That is us here together communicating and finding out what is the actual, what do we need to treat? The symptom or the actual wound. And we're getting down to the wound. We're actually treating the wound so that we can heal. Continue. I'm sorry. I just wanted to touch on that because I think that's the modeling that I'm talking about.
yeah, no problem. So the second part of that, going back to the beginning, the truth and reconciliation part of it, I was just trying to make sure I wasn't, miss appropriating intellectual property to the wrong person. But one of the things that I admired about the initiative that Bishop Tutu did, um, is something that I think we need to better understand here in our nation. We live in a very microwave society. We want instant gratification. Done. Th- we want things done uh, on a very large scale very quickly, you know. And I think if we slow down, realize that, yeah, we may be living in a society where, at the push of a button, this video sent out to millions of people, accessing it, watching it, and they could see it. However, we have to understand that, as humans, we don't move that fast. We got to slow ourselves down and start the work locally. Those grassroots efforts that we talk about, in this instance, that's what I feel like is needed, is to begin the truth and reconciliation at home. Begin to have these conversations within the community, and because I feel like America itself has never, one, been 100% honest about the atrocities, that have been and are still being committed to this day. This morning on the news, we're hearing about one person dead, five people injured at a Black Lives Matter march that happened in Oregon last night. Our sister in Indiana, Tanisha Chapel, uh, the horrible, horrible things that was done to her. These things are still happening, and they're still happening because there hasn't been that truth element, and there definitely hasn't been that reconciliation element. And until we begin to say, hey, you know what, let's address these first honestly, and that's one of the things that I have to admire about Germany. They teach the truth of Adolf Hitler, what he did, how bad it was for the nation, just how bad, of a person that his thoughts and ideas was, and we honor, what I'm saying, and we don't blink an eye at talking about the 6 million Yiddish Jews that were murdered, during the Holocaust. But do we, what I'm saying, talk about our own Holocaust that King Leopold did upon the 20 plus million, Africans in the Congo, and the atrocities that are still going on, not just here in this country. We look at our diaspora all across the this globe, and there's atrocities to be spoken of and to be, to be rectified. And so, and my salute to Bishop Tutu, I say that we need, as Sister Christine said, we need to sit down and start talking. And I don't consider them enemies. We need to sit down and talk with those who lack the knowledge, and lack the understanding of what the truth is. We're having, these things, having history being repeated, so often. And I was talking about this morning, with how France appeased Germany, and that led into World War II. If we appease Russia, we may be leading into a World War III. We have to learn from our history, and address it and talk to, one another and educate one another. I think it was Shakespeare may have said, "A rose by any other name is still a rose." We have to call. It doesn't matter what we call it. We just got to talk about it. So if they don't want to, what is it? Critical race theory. They don't want to call it by that. That's fine. I don't care what you call it. But let's talk about the truth of our history as a nation, not as black people or white people, and all this. That's why I say we can't, I'm not going to honor 28 days no more. We are Americans. We're not black Americans. The senator from Tennessee. He wants to say, oh, Black Americans and Americans. No, we are all Americans. It doesn't matter what color you have. There shouldn't be a qualifying element in front of my Americanness. You know, I was born here. You know, my parents were born here. I'm an American. You know, we're all Americans. So let's sit down and talk about American history, how what happened, and how we avoid, making that history become repeated for any ethnicity. Because next time maybe it's not us. But we don't want that history repeated for anybody. So I'll end there.
No, thank you so much for that, Pastor, because one of the things that we're actually talking about how do we begin having these difficult conversations, number one, and then how do we begin to do the truth telling and speaking truth to one another? Because I think that that is something that we really, really have to lay a solid foundation for. How do we begin to speak truths to one another? Last year what we did was we did villaging our voices. Just how do we village? How do we bring people together? And then how do we begin to bring them together with speaking truth together? Because that's important. When you bring them together, you want to bring them together, but you also want to make sure that you're speaking these truths to one another and talking about how do we bring healing, even though I'm coming with my hurt and my harm. I'm coming with some of my challenges. I'm coming, but how do we begin to cultivate just the coming together to, because if you can't even come together, that's part of the issue right there. That's part of the problem right there. That's groundbreaking 101. That's 101. That's your ABCs at the table. You can't read till you even know your alphabet. Well, we don't even want to we don't want to learn the alphabet so we can learn how to read or write. So if we're not doing the foundational things, and see, that's what I always say, we want a desired outcome, but we don't want to do the foundational things, which is just number one, how do we bring together? How do we unify? How do we come together just to communicate? Because that is at the foundation of even how we're going to move healing, truth, or reconciliation forward. Because if you can't even come to the table to talk, then we've got, that is, like I said, the basics. That's like basic. Those are the basic foundational elements to bring our community to a place of healing. We can't even come to the table and talk. We're
So,
going to stay.
Okuye, can you elaborate on who is we? That is coming from the chat.
Let's talk about who we. When I say we, I'm talking about me. I'm talking about you. I'm talking about my aunt. I'm talking about pastor. I'm talking about our community leaders. I'm talking about when we are part of this community. Are you part of the community, or are you isolated? You ain't part of this community. See, we've got to get out of that mindset that oh, I ain't part of the we. Yes, you're part of the we, whether you want to admit it or not. You're still part of this human race. This is humanity. This, we, the people, we, the community, we, the family, we, it's all about our, we, and us. We don't work outside of them premises. We have, with what I call, with all of the work that we're doing with Kitsap ERACE Coalition, it's about our, we, and us. We're breaking down those barriers. We're saying we are part of this community. It's our responsibility, and it's going to take all of us to do it. Simple premise, simple foundational principles, our, we, us. That way you're removing all these I's, all these me, and all of this separatism and all of this division. Because if you don't want to be a part of the human race, if you don't want to be a part of bringing all of our communities to a place of health and well-being, then that's part of the mindset, the conscious, the understanding, the knowledge, and the wisdom that we've got to break through some of those unhealthy thoughts, unhealthy behaviors, unhealthy mindsets. Because if we can't even speak to that and say those are unhealthy when we don't want to even be a part of the human race, or we consider ourselves more than those other folks. And who are the other folks? Those people are called, who are the others that we're othering? Because you're a human being. I hope you're a human being like I am. But why are we othering one another? And it starts with just that. You ask a simple question: are we othering ourselves? And how are we othering ourselves? That's that's all I have to say about that.
Kuye, let me add something there. When you talk about the othering, I think there are a lot of us that are out here that feel that we don't belong.
Yes.
And I've talked about that uh, in other podcasts where you've gone into a space and they say that they're inclusive, and for whatever reason, you just didn't feel like it was a wanting and inviting space, right? Some spaces are created where, hey, if you're not on our program, this is what we doing over here. So either you do it this way or keep moving on because you're a thorn in the side of progress, right? And so sometimes I think when we say we do mean we and everyone, but we do need to be cognizant that if people come to you and try to become part of the we, then you need to invite them in. And what I would say to counter that is, because I felt like that, and my various experiences through my domestication, going through the foster care system and aging out of being a ward of the state and things of that nature, and going through all of those experiences and trying to figure out, where do I belong? I think about our interracial kids and the tug of war that goes on in their mind, and how society views them, and they pick and choose when they're going to claim either side, right? And that's for both, the people, and um the different groups to which that they can belong and slide in and out of, and how you may feel like you never really truly belong there, you kind of are there, and so it's tough. And so what I would say in that space is, you can also create something, either for yourself individually or with the group, and it's not being an isolationist, but as you do that, you will continue to also draw people to you, right? And so that's how I felt. I created an organization, and through that, I have met other great people like Akuye, like Pastor, and then you can find that collaboration. And now we are, I have found the place to be the we, right? And that's why the organization is gather together, grow together, right? We're coming together in all of our different experiences, all of our different pain, all of our different knowledge, skills, and abilities, and we're finding a way to move forward. And it's not pretty, but we're committed to what the mission is. We're committed to the person, to the direction that we want to go in, and that everyone has a voice in that, and that we're going to try to find that way forward. And so in that, some of our board meetings might go 4 hours, but that is because everyone needs to have their ideas heard, and be able to speak, and have their input felt there. So I just wanted to add that, because I know that people have tried to engage in different circles and felt like, there just didn't seem to be a place for me. So I just encourage you to keep finding a space, because there is a space out there for you where you're going to thrive. And sometimes you just need to create it, because you can do that too, because you're quite powerful.
I'm glad you said that because, when we're talking about the way we invite, or the way we welcome, or the way we level the playing field. If I said to you, if I ask a question of you, Marwan, or you, Pastor, or Christina, or anyone, if I say, how welcoming are we really? And just ask the simple, how welcoming are we really? You know, One of the things that Dr. Maxine Mims had always said is, if you really want to be welcoming, you set the table and you start inviting. And I
I
thought about that. I said, you're right. If I wanted to have a party, what I would do is start sending out my invitations. Am I right?
Mhm. Yeah.
Okay. Well, we're talking about intentional, being intentional about how do we really um want to village, or how we really want to do this work moving forward. And I'm saying out of the gate, we have to begin to say, how do we set the table to welcome? How do we set the table to invite? How do we set the table and what's going to be at the table? And then how do we, because we set many tables all day long, but ain't everybody invited to those tables. So if we talking about, I'm to be real now. I'm talking to y'all, if we gonna be real and we gonna be villaging our voices and speaking truth together and having conversations and some courageous conversations like we're having here on the conduit, let's talk about the role we play or the barriers we throw up. Because I just been kind of working on a couple of projects, and I've seen this type of behavior and what I would say, wanting to be exclusive but saying they're being inclusive at the same time. And I'm saying, now you're lukewarm. What side of the fence we gonna be on? Are you riding? Are you straddling the fence? Are we gonna be one or we gonna be the other? So we've got to ask those questions as we begin to move this equity work, because equity, talking about making it equal, leveling the playing field, and coming in where everyone can feel a part and everyone can play a role and all of these things. And I was working on a couple, I won't say any organizations or any names. I was working on a project we were doing at quite a high level, working with our governor's office and working with different ones, and to do this project. And I said, well, we haven't yet invited our native family. You guys want to do a welcoming, but you haven't even welcomed them to do their own land acknowledgement. I said, if we are looking at it from multiple lenses, we would have everyone here represented, all of our, as many of our community members represented as we can, to make them feel like we're leveling, we're welcoming, we're inviting, we're doing these things. But if you have a select few, you're going to keep getting the same results, which is a select few. So let's talk, let's just be real about how we set the table from the giddy up, from the get go. And say, okay, can we do better? Of course. We all have fallen short and come short of what we would like to see. But how do we do the reflection? How do we learn? And then what is our takeaway? Okay, we could have, all right, I did make some mistakes with that. But what my learned lesson was is that I did learn that I could have been more intentional. I could have set the table a little bit different, and I could have did these things. But if we can humble ourselves at least to be able to say, I made the mistake. And if someone speaks truth to us and it hurts, just say, ouch. But then you go to that place of how do we heal and reconcile? You don't stay in the ouch, because the ouch will keep perpetuating pain.
What I would say, Akuye, is a couple things. Is you said something there at the end, and it was like, at the end, you say, I could do better, and you do some post analysis.
Yeah,
And I think we need to do some pre gaming, right? If you're getting ready to do something big, you're going to prepare for it, right? Or we can take sports, or you know, musicians, whatever it is, right? You're going to prepare before you go in. And if you know that you're going to go into a space, then you need to prepare yourself. And
yeah,
sometimes we go into a space ready for battle, ready to make sure that our point was heard and we're not really interested in what the other person or what the other party's issues or concerns are, or what they have to say. At the end of it, you're going to understand what my point is.
Yes.
Christina says, let's be honest, we have people who lack imagination to invite everyone because of loss of control under unclear decision making. How do you make space and room for everyone to feel heard and included? What I think, again, is behind not the symptoms, but the actual wound. Um, is fear, right? There
Yes.
is a fear. So
Yes.
if we're doing truth and reconciliation, that means that I might hear some truth that is hard for me to hear.
Yep. That's
And if
right.
I'm going to hear that truth and really listen to it and take it in, then I'm going to have to acknowledge it. And so there comes a lot of judgment in that changing of behavior now that it has been called out, where everyone in the room now knows that this is what it is, and they know that I know that this is what it is, so now I need to try to change my behavior. So I think that is really steeped in fear, right? And you don't really truly know, because we have this these social norms of decorum, where we might not just tell someone how a TI is. So we're going to spare them that, but we're going to let them walk around with broccoli in their teeth. So at the end of it, we're actually not doing them a service. But when we do it, there can be some malice behind that, right? Because there's some emotion in there. So yeah, I'm going to give you your truth and reconciliation, all right. And you know when you're coming at that spirit, and you know when you're truly trying to help your brother or sister to grow, right? And in that space, but it requires all parties, as they come together into these spaces, to say, you know what, I'm going to try to suspend my emotion, not take things personally, and then I'm also going to try to be impeccable in my word and with my words, in how I tell that truth or reconciliation, as I'm giving that
Yes.
critique, so that both parties are encoding and decoding communication in an
Yes.
effective manner, and then checking in with each other. And if you're feeling some kind of way, holding each other accountable, but most of all, holding yourself accountable.
Yes.
We're good at armchair quarterbacking, right?
Yes.
I can tell you what you've done wrong all day long and
You
how you
know,
need to fix your
I'm
life.
glad you're saying that, Marwan, because when you're talking about real truth and reconciliation, at the heart of that is compassionate listening. See, we wanna be able to say, and but we have to be able to hear as well, and to be able to do it in a compassionate way, because we with all of truth and reconciliation, part of it is conflict resolution, being able to work through some of the hard conversations, some of the hard truths, to be able to come together. That's why when we did our villaging our voices, speaking truth together, it was centered in conflict resolution. Because why are we here? We're here to resolve, we're here to repair, we're here to reconcile, we're here to heal. So if that's not even in that, and to be able to quiet ourselves enough to be in that space, to listen, to be able to hear these truths that are being spoken forth, is the important thing as well. Because I think sometimes we just want to be able to just, you know, just vomit out all of we want to be able to and we can do that, and we can do it well. But in the listening, to be able to hear, and because I think the challenge is it's hard for us to hear our own truths, or listen to speaking of someone else's truth, when we are at the center of that, and it is conflicting, because I've been hurt and injured, you've been hurt and injured, and I want you to hear my injury over your injury, over your injury. Oh no, my, and we do this thing back and forth, and never come to that place of healing and reconciliation and resolving of the conflict, because we just came in the circle to really to yell at each other, and
Mhm.
to make sure we exposing one another, and not really moving where we can really begin to hear. I I heard what Pastor was saying, but I all of those atrocities that happened with the Jewish community and Hitler. They had to move their whole nation, I mean their whole nation, to a place of truth and reconciliation with the harm that was perpetuated, with those atrocities that was enacted, and all of the violent acts and all of those terrible things that was done. They had to, in fact, they even had to move the world into a place where they had to walk in forgiveness and listen to one another. Trials and trials and trials went on, but then they had to move that whole country and all of those individuals, as well as the globe, because the globe was involved with that world war. The globe was involved with all of those atrocities that was perpetuated on those human beings. So we had to move the whole globe into a place of truth and reconciliation. And we can't even do it in our own communities.
So what are some, 2 or 3 things that people can do to get started, to start to row in a different direction? I
Yeah,
know many times we can look and we'll say, "Hey, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, and the other, so I'm doing my job,"
yeah,
but we can always do better, and we're always going to be a hypocrite in
yes,
someone else's eye because I
yeah,
can be of such high emotional intelligence in one space and
yes,
and be totally out of control with my emotions in another space, and it's like, wait a
yes,
minute, you were speaking so rationally over here, but over here, you know, something done got to you, and now
yeah,
you're not that same person, and understand that that's part of being human. It's going to happen. The thing is for me is trying to prepare yourself as much as possible when you're going to find yourself in those spaces, and like you said, do the analysis at the end, but it's doing the work all the way
yeah,
through and being prepared, being conscious of mind, as you have these conversations and as you operate throughout
yeah,
out these spaces. I tell folks on my team is that you never turn it off. You're always G2. If you see me in the street, you see
yes,
G2. I can't hide from it. And so there's no time that I can take this outfit off of G2 and someone sees something else. So I always have to behave in a certain manner, because otherwise, what will they say, right? And then that becomes hard because are you living an honest life of who you truly are, or is it a facade? We code switch, and that's something that we have to do. But you've got to figure that out for yourself too, and be comfortable in your own skin. And I know that's a hard thing for
yeah,
people to do because are you going to accept me as I am, all of my
yes,
warts and my scars and blemishes? But you have to accept yourself first, and it becomes a lot easier to walk through the world when it's like, hey, this is who I am,
yes, yeah.
uh, and I'm gonna do the best that I can.
Yeah, I'm thankful that you talked about that masking and that code switching, and and I think that our nation has cultivated this culture of masking versus cultivating a culture of truth and transparency, and being able to work through difficult and challenging and even troubled uh, uh, instances, to be able to, yes, it is, because regardless of where we are now, the things that happen in our lives and everything, and what happened to me yesterday, there's nothing that I can change. The only thing I can change is what I'm doing now and moving forward and being very intentional. And that's why I think that when we talk about truth and reconciliation, it's not something that's an automatic thing. We have to cultivate this. We have to grow this, like you said, coming together, grow together, and love together. You have to cultivate that type of moving forward in a healthy way. And it's not going to poof like a fart overnight that you're going to get that. But if you are intentional about how do we really focus on healing some of our history, because, I think it was 2017, we did healing our land and healing our history. How do we really heal the land? How do we really heal the history? Because What's happening now in our communities and in our families is the land that needs to be healed. And what needs to be healed is the history that has taken place with our relations, whether it was healthy or unhealthy. Those are the things that need to be healed. So as we move forward, how do we really move forward in a way that is health, wellness, truth, reconciliation, repair, restoring, all of those elements, that will bring us to a place that we will have a healthier relationship with one another, because that's where it is for me with the work that we've been doing. We can identify all the woes. We know that, yes, we come from a stolen people brought to a stolen land. Yeah, we know the atrocities that have been perpetuated on these black bodies that are in the history of our ancestors, and the continued history of oppression, hurt, and harm. And until we are able, as human beings, to be able to move ourselves away, because I can go back and say, yep, y'all still lynching. Yep, look what y'all did. I can point out all those atrocities forever. But is it bringing us to a place of healing? I say, yes, 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 we need to remember the history. The history is why we're having these conversations for truth and reconciliation. And the history will always be the reason why we have to be at the table for truth and reconciliation. So you can't have one without the other. And you have to understand how to move it from that history to a place of healing and reconciliation. That's where I'm at.
We're coming up on our hour, and so I want to give you the last word. But again, I always like to leave people with something tangible on what they can do. And so for me, I believe that's why a social contract is so important. As I
Yes.
said before, I believe that people are operating from a space of fear, and when you really drill down to it, that's what you're going to see. And so if I'm doing the work, if I'm holding myself accountable, if I'm preparing to go into these conversations to, give truth and also hear a truth and then take positive action on that,
Yes.
then there has to be some kind of social contract so that when I engage you, for an example, I know that you too are coming in earnest,
Yes.
that you are
Yes.
also doing the work. And the fear is we
Honest.
can come out and try to do the work, but I don't know if we're on one accord in that doing the work. So I may allow myself to be vulnerable, and then you hurt me, which is going to make
Yes.
me withdraw, right?
Yep.
And so the social contract, I believe, is really one of the main first steps of this is what we are going to agree to, and then we're going to hold ourselves to this contract as we engage with each other. And as long as we're cognizant of that and we can fall back to that, because sometimes it is emotional, it is hard work. We say that and it seems so cliche. No, it's hard. It's going to hurt. It's going to be painful. We're going to fail. We're going to have to stand back up. It's hard. It's difficult. You don't want to have to do it, but you got to get back up and get back into the fight. Then we say, hey, this is where I'm at right now. And I would say that, last year I said that to you guys when we met. My emotional intelligence is low right now. So give me some grace. You're catching me in this space. So what I'm saying now is more emotion and not logic. And so I'm not giving you my best self. I cannot do that. So either we need to stop the conversation now and come back to it. We need to cautiously continue to advance. And I'm letting you know that I am trying to work through my emotions, but at the same time, I need you to extend that grace to understand that right now my emotions are heightened and I may be doing and saying things that may not be helpful for our growth together, but I still want to try to honor the social contract so that we can move forward. So for me, the thing is establishing a social contract for whoever it is or whatever organization that we find ourselves working with. And if we adhere to that, then I think that's how we begin to really see some really fundamental change and start building some scaffolding around the work that we're trying to do. So let me go ahead and give you the last word. Just get your feedback on that thought, and then take us on out, Akuye.
Yeah. Oh man, I'm glad that you touched on that because, how can two even walk together unless they agree? We always believe in our community agreements. If we're coming into village, these are things that we agree on. We agree that this is how we'll work together. We agree that we'll come in this multitude of counsel, that we agree that we will be respectful. We agree that we're here to listen to one another. We agree. See, when you're talking about culture to culture, a community agreements are the foundation of how it sets the culture. It sets the tone for how we will work and walk and journey together to do this work. So I say the same thing. I don't use the word contract because contracts can be broken, but I do use agreements because until we come to a place where we can agree, then we'll always have these challenges. We want to agree. We want to come into the agreement of how we will do this work and come into these environments and work alongside with one another. It starts with agreement. And like I always stand on the word and say, how can these individuals, whether it's this one, that, what all of us, how can we unless we agree? We must come to a place of agreement that this is how we will conduct ourselves as we move forward to do the work. So this is good. This is good conversation and languaging because we want to use language that is always going to empower us to come in. Even our language, our words can be welcoming, or they can be very dismissive or isolating, or be able to, people understand language, they understand relationships, they don't, and I communicate most of the time with my body language, you know with my eyes, whether I'm gonna suck my teeth and shrug my head, cross my arms, and do all of this. This is how babies communicate with us, But we move away from the foundational communications, and our whole being is about communicating, you know. And so I want to start with the foundational basis, how we're communicating and how we're agreeing to do this work. So thank you for that, Mr. Marwan.
Absolutely. I just want to make a few final announcements. The Conduit podcast will be covering the John Henry Turpin Post Office
Yay!
building naming. So join Living Arts, Cultural Heritage, and Living Life Leadership, the NAACP, for the U.S. Postal Service and U.S. Rep Derek Kilmer for the renaming commemoration ceremony of the John Henry Turpin Post Office building. That will be this Thursday, 2 days from today at 1:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 602 Pacific Avenue in Bremerton, 98337. Masks are required. And also, unfortunately, the building is not ADA accessible, but that's okay because we will be live broadcasting on the conduit. Okay, so I will send the link out for that. And then two more announcements. There's a pop-up clinic at Sinclair on Thursday, which is the exact same day from 1 to 6 to follow up from the Christmas giveaway pop-up clinic from Surviving Change. Same offering, ages 5 and all up, and all of the vaccines are available. And then the final announcement, Akuye, if you would give that for the Bainbridge Island Museum of Arts and the March, and just talk about that really quickly as we go
Yes,
out.
I will. Well, let's not forget about Friday night. Our young people is having a party. They have their Cinderella soiree, and we call it the Cinderella soiree because they're going to start at 8, but they got to hit the door by midnight. And so, they've got to be gone by mid. You know what Cinderella had to beat it out the ball by midnight. And so We want to make sure we're inviting all our young people. We just want them to have a wonderful time for Black History Month with our Kitsap County Black Student Union, Kitsap Surge, Kitsap ERACE, hosting our young people so that, and we want to do it safe. They have all of their masking. They'll make sure that they're doing their safety precautions. And we also want to do our finale with our community celebration at Bema. We have a world renowned artist, film director, Miss Gilda Shepherd, who will be doing her film and community conversation. We'll be marching over to the pavilion, and then we'll be viewing her film, and then we'll be having a dialogue with herself and Miss Simmons, as well as Kamonte Carter, who has been incarcerated ever since he was a young child. And so we will be talking about that school to prison pipeline. And we also will be having a community celebration back at BMO with artist Corey Anderson Bennett and the community as a whole. And we just want everyone to come and celebrate with us and to acknowledge that, you know what? Black Lives 365 is more than just a month. We are celebrating the contributions of African Americans throughout our nation for 365 days out of the year, and understanding that this is more than just a label. It's not a slight for anyone, but we want to make sure this is American history, not just Black history. Thank you.
Boy, you said it there. And the last thing that we want to say is that the severe weather shelter is open
Yes.
tonight. It is 34 degrees currently in Kitsap
Oh my
County.
goodness.
It is 3:30 in the afternoon. That is 2 degrees above freezing. If you know of anyone who is outside and is unsheltered, sleeping in their car, please have them call us 360-373-3000. They can set up for text notification at Kitsap SWS to 898-211. We will be picking people up and taking them to one of the 3 severe weather shelters. Um, do call so that we can get you picked up. If you see some folks that are out on the street, please just stop, give them our number, 360-373-3000. Give us a call, let us know where they're at. Let's see if we can get
Yes.
folks indoors.
Thank
These
you.
temperatures are going to remain this way for the rest of this week. It
Thank
is
you for that, Marwan. Thank you for that announcement, because I don't want to be negligent in the announcement. Also on Saturday at the Oprah Robertson Teen Center, we will be doing our G team. We'll be meeting the needs of our homeless right there on Martin Luther King Way for Black History Month. We've given out sleeping bags, hats, gloves, socks, and we want to make sure they also have a meal and a movie. So we'll be giving away tickets for them to get them a hot meal at restaurants, gift cards, and then we'll also be giving them tickets to go see a movie, because they are just as human as any one of us. And we want to thank you, Marwan, for this announcement, to bring to light those that are homeless, those that have needs, that we want to make sure we're taking care of our most vulnerable in our community.
absolutely. And if there are any announcements that you need to get out there, please contact us because I'm more than happy to push that information out to you. That's doing the work, right? So we look forward to hearing from you. We appreciate you. For the Bishop Desmond Tutu Truth and Reconciliation Commission Initiative, for Akuye, for Pastor Ellington, I'm Marwan. We will see you